to the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast. I'm Nick McDaniel. He's Myron Fancher. How are you, buddy?
Well, I'm doing good, and I've already practiced this show. We had some technical difficulties.
Yeah, take two. Hey, look, it happens sometimes, man. It just does. It is what it is. But it's your typical Tuesday for me, man. Just the grind, just pushing through, recording. And hey, look, I appreciate Myron. A lot. If you don't watch the other show, Myron filled in this past week on the Tapped In Indie show. We consolidated in with the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight, which, of course, every week is typically right there on the Patreon page, patreon.com/tappedoutpod. Georgia Wrestling Spotlight's usually every week there for free, folks. That's right, free. Absolutely no charge. Right up there with the nationwide list compiled by Phil Stamper. All for free. Yes, you can have a free membership. I'm going to repeat that again. There is such thing as a free membership. But the dollar level, hey, you get the show notes. But think about this. Between the two shows, Myron, there's like 25 pages of notes this week between the two shows.
Yeah. I've been through half of it. It's a lot of very comprehensive information, folks. Our subscriber list is a who's who of professional wrestling.
So I think there's a lot of information that you can get between the national and the obviously the indie show as well, which is why you want to be at least at the dollar level. But you probably want to be at the $5 level because that's where you get the weekly shows. You get those at least the day before every week. Do my best. It's only happened like once or twice where that didn't happen, but for the most part, we do pretty good about keeping on space. $10 level, that gets you everything we do, including interviews, bonus episodes, whatever. Get those early. And then, of course, you get the digital copy of the exclusive Tapped Out collectibles that we do every month. And then the $25 level, that'll get you even the physical 8x10 autographed by said wrestler, including the digital copy as well. So you get a lot of stuff is what we're trying to tell you, and there's some value there for you. So become a member, patreon.com/tapped. But hey, we get it. We got some people that are on tappedoutpod.com. What is that, you say? Well, that's our YouTube channel, by the way, tappedoutpod.com. And like you see in the little image there, Myron, what should they do? It's real simple. You're going to click the subscribe button, click that little bell, turn those notifications on, so that way every time and any time we put something there on the YouTube channel, you'll get it.
Yep. And the more likes we get, the more we know we're doing good and continue to make content you like, people.
That's what we try to do. We try to do our best. Hey, before we get into some of the fun, wacky world of pro wrestling, we want to take a minute to, we addressed the passing of Sabu this past week. Sabu, man.
Icon.
Look, I'm not surprised. Wasn't surprised. I was really moved by all the people that are out there, making the post and, hey, he meant this and he meant that. Like my early time, like, hey, in ECW, like watching the ECW stuff, I'm like, hey, he was a key component of that, a cornerstone essentially of it with him and Taz. Did you see Taz put out a video, kind of paying his respects and stuff? It was kind of cool to see because, for the longest time, the story. Cause here's the thing. Let's sidebar on, and I try not to, about the accuracy of the internet, Forever, these guys hated each other, they didn't like each other, whatever. And it was kind of cool to see, like, hey, like, we had a love-hate relationship, but I respected the guy. He meant a lot to me, and I'm Taz because of Sabu. I mean, that's kind of cool to see.
And so many people, he made an impact on so many people's lives I did not realize until I saw the tribute posts. So,
yeah, I mean, it's it sucks. Every year we get older, those things hit closer to home. I was like, dude, he was only like 8 years older than me.
Yeah,
and I'm like, that's a scary. Now, granted, obviously he did a lot of things to his body. He pushed his body to the limits that, I ain't gonna lie to you. I didn't do it. So but still, man, it sucks. I mean, we're getting, unfortunately, at the age where more and more of the people that, we were big fans of growing up are starting to pass away just because of our age. It's not that it's our age, and kind of their age. So, hey, rest in peace, Sabu. That's it sucks as but it's unfortunately that's it's facts of life. It is what it is at this point. So,
did you enjoy Backlash, Nick?
I did. I didn't catch it until Sunday. I did back-to-back indie shows Friday, Saturday. So I did catch it on Sunday. And So I enjoyed it. Let me back up. I will say this. I did. Let's just work our way backwards on the card. Obviously, John Cena, Randy Orton, undisputed title on the line.
Killer.
The match was really good. But can I be the first to say I hope this isn't the last time they meet?
Yeah, but it looks like Cena's just going to go through all of his allies over the years, all the people he knew. R-Truth is next. Did you see the press conference?
I did. You know me. Here's the crazy thing, dude. I tell a lot of people, like, I may be more into the press conferences at times than I am the PLEs at times, because they're really interesting. I think you can read a lot into what's said and done. I do kind of like that they are blending back and forth between like kayfabe and not kayfabe, depending on. John's living in kayfabe in the press conferences. I mean,
Anakin Cena.
Yeah, Anakin Cena. Yeah. But R-Truth essentially cost him he cost Randy Orton the title. It is what it is at this point. But it looks like we're going to get R-Truth, at the next one. Now here's the thing. I will be the first to say it. Like, I think it's cool. I'm for it. But on the other side, I do want to mention I'm for it because I believe it's going to be a Saturday night main event and not a PLE.
Yeah, that could be here in Atlanta too.
So, are you for, like, you see what I'm saying? Like, if it was a PLE match, I'm not sure that I'm as sold on it as you're telling me, like, hey, I'm going to get this on a Saturday night main event.
I would like it on a Saturday night main event. Yeah, especially. Yes, I agree with you.
I think any PLE appearance by Cena needs to be, look, and I'm as big we've clearly established I'm a big R-Truth fan as, they come, but it's like, hey, I still think whoever he's facing on a PLE needs to be like the top guys going forward.
Yeah.
And there's a short list of those guys, by the way. Also, by the way, on the card, Jacob Fatu successfully defends the U.S. title against LA Knight, Drew McIntyre, Damian Priest. But that's not the big news, man.
Jeff Cobb made his appearance. Jeff Cobb, fresh out of Japan, made his appearance, interfered in the match after Solo did. Jacob didn't look too happy about that, Nick. There's a lot of faces on pictures.
They have a lot of history. If you have not followed their history over the Indies and MLW and in the past, Jacob Fatu and Jeff Cobb have had one of those intertwined paths through their travels. And here's my last question on this one. Is Jacob Fatu and Solo splitting? Because I think that's coming at some point.
Yes, that's splitting. That's going to be the match. Jeff Cobb is going to be the variable. A whole new bloodline, maybe?
No. See, I'm going the other direction. Is that the final nail in the coffin? Are we done? Like, if you split Fatu and Solo up and they go off in their separate paths, have we at that point successfully erased out? Like, we're done. I thought, me personally, the bloodline was done a while back. The last remnants that you got to clean up is this piece. Because here's the other thing. Where's the Gorillas of Destiny been?
I think one of them was hurt. But we're getting into some tough questions. Some tough questions about the WWE right now. And we're also very interested in it. So, good sign.
Yeah. Other tough criticisms of the pay-per-view. I enjoyed it, by the way. I'm going to preface that. Gunther versus Pat McAfee. There's a lot of push out there saying, hey, Gunther gave Pat a little too much. They made Pat look kind of like a superhero a little bit, in the sense of he hung in there and he was a fighter, blah, 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 and it's like, I even saw one post, this is the quote I missed round one, that I wanted to ask you was, has somebody said, has WWE become Pat McAfee's playground? Like, they just let him do whatever he wants to because he's Pat McAfee, and did they let it go over? It's one thing, and I pushed a little. I agree to some, not this far, but to some degree. It's one total shot coming. It's one thing for Pat to have that match with Adam Cole, because Pat's as big as Adam Cole, if not bigger.
Yeah.
But to stand toe to toe with a Gunther, they're like, it might be a little too much for what we're asking.
It's looking like this is going to be a seldom occurrence. Pat are going to come out there and it's going to draw a lot of heat. Whoever's facing him is going to draw a lot of heat. He's going to come out the commentary table the next day with a bruised collarbone and having his blood vessel in his eye popped and looking more and more like a wrestler, wrestling personality, and one of the best commentators there is. So,
There's some people that really don't like him, which is I always like it's a different vibe and a different taste, and I get that.
There's some people that like Mauro Ranallo.
No, listen, I also like Pat's sports show, so that's part of the issue. Like I knew I was going to enjoy when he came over because I actually like the style and the personality on the show.
I'm a McAfee fan.
Yeah.
I'm a McAfee fan, and I love Michael Cole and him together. They do such a wonderful job.
I think he's done wonders for Michael Cole. So has the absence of Vince McMahon, but that's a different story. Laya Valkyrie, she's defeated Becky for the IC title. I don't think we're done there. I think there's probably more to come.
Promo last night.
Yeah, I mean, obviously more to come. Dominic Mysterio defeated Penta for the men's Intercontinental Championship, thanks to El Grande, and then listen, yeah, and I think part of Raw spins into like, hey, do we end up in this, or does Dominic get the slide off, and then Penta and Americano have their thing over here? Before we pass on, and I didn't round one didn't try that. I get think of this. There's the rumor floating that they're already ready to put Penta and Phoenix back together as the Lucha Brothers and boost the tag team with them now. And I was like, too soon?
I don't know if it's too soon because there are great tag teams in WWE, but the problem is they've had to wrestle each other so many times because the tag team scene is weak. Okay, Motor City Machine Guns and DIY was a dream match.
The first time.
The first time.
The first 3 times.
Yeah, and you keep seeing the same thing. The War Raiders or the Raiders or whatever you call them now. They never got me. The Street Profits never got me. But I'd love to see the Lucha Bros back in there, especially put the tag team belts on them before you start doing any of the AAA stuff. Let them go to Mexico with the WWE tag team belts.
Hey, seeing that, before we move on to the next topic, since you brought up AAA, does your opinion change of anything with that report coming about the ownership percentages?
No, because they've apparently been working on this deal for 3 years, according to Taz. WB now owns 51%. A corporation named Phillip owns the 49%. Phillip is a multimedia sports conglomerate that's got a huge footprint and can maybe bring them the kind of stuff outside the United States that WWE can't do right now.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a partnership that you don't get told about in the at the wrestling press conference. I think this gives them a much more opportunities.
I think one of the things that I like about it is this. I like them not outright owning 100% because they have somebody to answer to a little bit.
Yeah,
they can't run in there and just go, we're just blowing, because if this company has the understanding of what a sports presentation should look like in Mexico,
mm-hmm.
the WWE can't go like, oh, we need to do this. There's somebody there to go, hey, I don't think that's going to work here. Does that make sense? That's what was my biggest fear. I'm hoping now there's somebody that pushes back a little and says, no.
Well, maybe they're also capable of getting a program. Say you buy into New Japan. Well, you've got a media conglomerate over there that's ready to help you get your contracts for television. I think we're going to see more television contracts because of this worldwide. Because there are some people that still are using the WWE network in their random parts of this country or the world, random parts of the world that still gets the WWE network for all of their pay-per-views. This could be a media opportunity to finally get into those markets you can't get to right now.
Yeah. Speaking of new markets, a couple guys are getting into new markets, specifically one we wanted to lead off with. Braun Strowman gets a new show.
Mm-hmm. He was released from wrestling. He had a problem with his leg. He was released years ago, but there were no bad issues after this. But then we find out he's getting this. I don't know how they're going to do it. It's just a guy eating a lot of stuff. It's going to be variables. Let's see here.
The whole menu
he's going
or
to tour
something.
America. These
Yeah.
are tour America. I mean, other people have diners, drive-ins, or dives, but this is just going to be a massive man eating lots of food. And I would wager,
This is more the feature of the man versus food thing.
yeah,
Like the food
he's going to
challenges or
eat
whatever.
the stuff I like. So I'm going to see, like, I know you road trip, but
Mhm.
if I'm going to be based on vacations, when I go out of town, I'll be like, we need to go to this place, Melissa.
So the hysterical part is now I'll have another one. You know, we actually do that. There is an app, believe it or not, that you can look up the places that diners drive-in and dives has been, and you could actually try them, especially like if he raves about them, how great they are, like the Greasy Spoons or the soul food places or whatever.
That's
Like,
awesome.
yeah, so you can and we've hit a couple along our, like, hey, we're not going to be that far from that one. We can go to there and eat. This would be one of those, like, you would look at, like, I think he's supposed to go in and try to eat the whole menu or as much of the menu as he can or whatever, and that kind of thing.
Look,
By the way, he'll be worked out great on these smaller menu places.
yeah, I'm interested. I'm very interested in this. We're going to see if he's got the charisma and the personality to carry it, though.
I think he does. We've seen some personality out of him. And here's the thing: this thing didn't just fall in his lap. There's usually, like there were somebody going, hey, audition for this, test for this, like blah blah blah. We've seen, we want to see your personality, and it worked. Typically, it ain't just give us a dude who can eat a ton of food.
This isn't like a Vince McMahon production. This is the real thing. It's going to be produced through WBE and another company. I hope it gets picked up and get a lot of a USA, something like that.
I think that's who they said it was on. I thought they
Well,
was picked up.
That? How can you beat that?
By the way, probably alleviated a lot of the hard feelings of the release because he kind of had a soft place to land already. And by the way, makes it easier for them to probably make that call because of simply saying,
hey, you got another job?
Hey, we got you. Go do that, and we'll figure that out. We'll figure the rest of it out when you're done. But speaking of a guy who's got tons of jobs, The Miz.
Like, love that guy. Love that guy.
You got 32 jobs, man.
Yes. I guess I hope. Well, I don't know what this Carmelo Anthony gimmick they got going on right now, or if they're going to have to wrap that up before he hosts. Is he going to have to take time away to host this? American Gladiators. Remember American Gladiators when you were a kid, Nick?
So I kind of knew they were coming back. I knew it was a Prime Video thing because we're not going to talk about names. I'm just going to leave it at this. Had somebody telling me about this, that it was coming probably about a month or two ago because that person was... that person was interested in, maybe being on the show. So hey, I was a little aware the show was coming. So when you sent me that, I was kind of like, oh, okay, there's a kind of a cool thing that could work out for benefits of a lot of people on that show. Because then you got a set of eyes going. Anyway, I'm not surprised. The Miz has hosted other shows. He's done that silly obstacle course. The problem is in between takes. I probably should have looked that up so I'd have known what the name of that show was. But he did a show. John Cena did it originally, and we watched it for one point for a while. But anyway, so it doesn't surprise me anything that the Miz does whatsoever.
He's got it. He's got it. There's a reason why he's been there so long, and never not been back up to the top like he was. They like him. They need him. He's a solid rock in there. Yeah.
Him and R-Truth milking money for 20 years.
Yep. Oh,
making that money.
I wish we could get them back together, man.
Listen, maybe when he comes back, maybe that's in the future. But hey, speaking of the future, why don't we look back at the past and dive into what everybody's here for? That is the wrestling what ifs. I love that people send these in because here's the hard part. Honestly, dude, I can't remember which ones we've done in the past at this point or not because in the past there were notes. Remember, we wouldn't get through all of them, and there was like, dude, I can't remember anyway. So I appreciate again everybody. I put the post out on Saturday. People submitted them, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. We'll do it again in the future. I'm going to start putting out those posts over the weekends, probably Saturdays, when we know what we're going to do the week ahead, and we can kind of, helps to have the involvement of we love and appreciate it. So I thanks everybody for sending them in. Yes. Here's my thing. Even if we've done it before, if it's been long enough back and somebody does it again, we may do it again. I don't know. We'll see. But let's jump right into the wrestling what ifs, Myron. What if Magnum TA never had his car accident.
The pictures of that car accident are scary.
Yeah.
His C4 and C5 vertebrae apparently exploded.
Yeah.
He's lucky he got out of there alive, much less paralyzed one leg.
Well, we always forget, Myron, we're old. So a lot of our fan base is young, and they're going, "What? Who's Magnum TA? What are you talking about?"
But he was 27.
I know, but so a little backstory here. In the 80s, Magnum TA was a wrestler. He was with JCP, Jim Crockett Promotions, if you're not familiar, / NWA. Kind of looked like Tom Selleck with a mullet.
Yeah.
Women loved him. Men wanted to be him, the whole thing. Dusty Rhodes saw megastar in him. Why does that matter? Well, Dusty Rhodes was the head booker at the time, so he was the one. And they were looking for somebody to take Ric Flair. How about that? In 1980s, they were already looking for Ric Flair's replacement. Wrap your head around that, fans. They would go on to have him and Tully Blanchard. If you're in Starrcade 85, date yourself. If you were alive, you were a wrestling fan during that era, pretty much everybody kind of say that is the measuring stick for I Quit matches. If you disagree, tappedoutpod@gmail.com, and I'll throw it straight into the trash. So you're aware.
Well, this is. I don't know if people realize he had the rocket.
Oh, yeah,
strapped to his back. They were lighting it, and then this happened.
Yeah, he literally was like, it was already noted he would be beating Ric Flair, 96, 97, probably somewhere in that window. That was kind of the plan. Well, whatever. But then now to the accident you were discussing, October 14th, it literally almost killed him. Almost killed him. But then you had all of those injuries, that just, here's where things go wrong, right? So they have to scrap the whole thing of him being champion. Yes. Obviously, he's lucky he's alive. So wrestling's not even an issue. So basically, out of nowhere, Dusty basically flips Nikita Koloff, and he becomes the babyface.
Yep, and he goes up against Flair for the belt and does a DQ match. He was DQ'd. Now, would Magnum TA been DQ'd? I doubt it. I think it was probably his. And they give Flair 38 or 39 title reign, somewhere in there.
It depends on which Wikipedia you're reading at this point. That's what I would say.
Flairpedia, that's what I'm looking at.
And so the question became like, hey, if he doesn't have the accident and he becomes the champion, does the NWA have a marketable babyface that looks like him that can go toe-to-toe with a guy like Hogan?
Well, yes, and that's going to come in a little bit down on the notes as we go, because I've got some things I was thinking about in here. What would an NWA look like if they would have had a guy with charisma, the look, something about him, instead of having, Flair was old by this point. Flair, he still wrestled another 40 years. Yeah. But I don't know. I think this was Flair magic time, and I think he would have been. Ric Flair didn't make it against Hulk Hogan. Magnum TA might have. Magnum TA being a face.
Well, here's the thing. Here's why I think they work. The WWF had Hogan, sure, but they were polished, flash, glitz, glamour. NWA was gritty, blue collar, rugged. Okay, that is Magnum.
Yeah.
So I think he fits like their level of Hogan, but the look and the presentation is more what they were looking for in the NWA, and so it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Problem with that is here's where the what if starts going even like more in a different direction. If you have Magnum on top, you know who you not need?
Sting.
You don't need Sting so soon. We're not saying ever, but you don't need him so soon.
Yeah, well, it took the whole talent structure and affected it, like top to bottom.
Okay, you have to elevate Sting quicker than you probably maybe wanted. I don't know if you did or whatever. But you got Luger, whose whole thing was muscles. Well, it wasn't like Magnum wasn't jacked.
Yeah.
But he was, so it kind of shifts everything around and shoves everybody back of the Sting's, rush to the top, get there so soon? Probably not. He's probably year, 2, maybe 3 later, just because they're going to get the run out of Magnum, right?
Yep. And this is before Ted Turner brought bought them out.
Yes.
So if Magnum would have stayed around and got that Ted Turner money when it became WCW, and got the Ted Turner production and got all the other stuff that made WCW.
Well, here's my question: does it even get that far? They only go. Turner doesn't. They don't need Turner's money because they actually hold up and like run and hold their own. We'll get there in a minute, but as far as it comes to other wrestlers, if Magnum's the guy, he's the top babyface, he's the top draw. If he's their Hogan, do we turn Flair? Because we don't, or do you keep him as the heel? Or does the Horseman do what the Horsemen do and they turn on Flair because he lost the title to Magnum?
Oh, man.
But yes, anyway, but to ask your questions, yeah, the WCW part of it, the only reason we have a WCW / Turner is because JCP's in financial straits. You see what I mean? Like, they don't need it.
Might not have been in financial straits if they had Magnum and could have used that as a marketable babyface.
Correct.
Ooh.
But then, of course, the answer always comes back, well, even if they do, at some point, does he look up north to New York, is what they called it back then, and go, hey, I can make some money up there. Imagine what Vince McMahon does with a Magnum.
Okay, so he'd have survived into the early 90s, and Hogan would have just been starting the steroid trials, and they would have needed somebody to replace Hogan. So he might have popped into that spot. There's a good chance. But the horrible thing about that is, what if they put polka dots on him? What if they did him? What if Vince did him like he did Dusty?
But here's the problem. But that was from a position of power, not a position of weakness. If JCP's the stronger promotion, you're going to use that guy because now he's a guy that you're using to help build. You're not trying to mock and make fun of, or rib for that matter. So instead of doing, Magnum, if he doesn't have the car wreck, I think we probably are all in agreement. He's probably a multi-time world champion. He's probably a WWE Hall of Famer, or how about this, an NWA Hall of Famer if it's the winner. Because if they make it, Crockett wanted to go national, so does he go national? He wins the race, and it ain't WWF/E, it's NWA, and Billy Corgan has nothing to do with wrestling because they've think about how that just spirals down through the thing. By the way, there's no ECW moment where Shane Douglas throws down the NWA belt and announces ECW is a world champion because the NWA champion is in the NWA still, and lots of stuff how things spiral out of control. That's the fun part about the what ifs. That you can sit there and go, one thing leads to another, which changes X, Y, and Z.
Well, the thing about the what ifs I actually enjoy the most is doing the research and prep for them and finding out these little bits of knowledge I did not know. So I love that.
Let's jump to number 2. What if Brock Lesnar never left the WWE and ended up in UFC back in 2004? Backstory real quick. I'll just fly through the notes here. It's 2004. Jeez, so bad. It's 2024. No, it's 2004, dude. You're old. He was literally on a rocket ship. One of the fastest rising stars in WWE history. He literally debuted, and within a couple years, he's the youngest world champion by defeating The Rock at SummerSlam 2002. He had feuded with Big Show, Kurt Angle, Taker, on and on and on and on. But after 20, he leaves.
Yeah.
He tried to get, he did the thing with the Vikings. He tried to make the NFL. He went on to the UFC, which he did okay, folks. I'm not sure if you're familiar. He did okay. But if he doesn't, let's look at what happened instead. Because when he left, they were completely had to restructure the top. They had made him the guy.
Oh, yeah.
But in his absence, they could bring in guys, I don't know, like his OVW classmates, John Cena, Batista, Randy Orton, Edge gets a shot. He's off in the UFC. Boom, 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 boom. He, comes back in 2008, limited dates, all that kind of stuff. He was an attraction at that point.
Well, he was a huge attraction in Japan, too, when he went over there after the Vikings thing. So he was sharp as a professional wrestler. You can't give him slack about that. UFC, he was a killer. he comes back to WWE with even more credibility. Somebody else made him bigger than WBE, if I look at it that way.
Yeah. Here's the question, because it's a topical question. If he doesn't leave and he doesn't become an MMA guy, does Cena get the push? Because Brock is the guy. And he's young. That's the key to this whole thing. He was so young at the time when it happened that it's not like you were even looking for a replacement for him, because you didn't need one for a long time. You could have had him 10, 15. He could have literally been Cena.
Yeah.
For that run.
His personality, though, might not have jived with that. I don't know if he could have taken, without Heyman, I don't know if he could have taken the press and all the stuff that way it is now.
Different time, remember, this is 2004. He just has to go out there, destroy people. Vince loved him. Mm-hmm. Vince was going to paint him as a monster. Eventually, yes, he's going to have a mouthpiece with him when they figure out, hey, that's not his thing. He doesn't want to talk. Put somebody with him. Just have him go out there and destroy people. That's what he did.
What if he hadn't left? Do you think he would have broke the streak earlier?
I don't know that he breaks it, because he breaks it because of the credibility that he got out of UFC. My opinion. I could be wrong.
No. I would have to agree with you 100% on that.
Because here's my argument: if he's Cena instead of Lesnar coming back from UFC, they didn't let John beat it and end the streak.
Nope.
You see what I'm saying?
That made him a badass. He had a massive crossover for wrestling and MMA.
Yeah.
He looked like, we went out there and did that MMA, so he looked like a psycho killer. And it brought a lot of credibility to it. So
yeah. I mean, but we get a whole run of matches with guys like Batista, Randy, Edge, Shawn Michaels, that whole ruthless aggression era group that come through there. We get all of that along the way. Oh, by the way, do you know what we also probably don't get? Suplex City.
He could have been more of a Kurt Angle type wrestler, a really big Kurt Angle, since he had all that amateur background, MMA background.
That was the point. When he did the MMA stuff, that's when he came back. He was the suplex, monster. That was that's where Suplex City come from. That version doesn't exist probably if he's, is he still, look, are we getting more of the guy that went long distance at WrestleMania against Kurt Angle? He could clearly go.
Yeah.
Is that the version we have, and we don't have the guy that's in there super quick, throwing somebody around, bippity boppity boom, and finishing them off as a monster? Probably so. But look, overall, I think at the end of the day, Brock Lesnar doesn't leave. I think he's got way more title runs.
Yeah.
Or long runs instead. Literally by the time he's out of his 20s, he's probably a multiple-time champion.
Yeah.
Hot take of the show. If Brock Lesnar doesn't leave, he's probably John Cena. As far as title reigns and stuff like that. I'm not saying personality. I get that. The Doctor of Thugonomics is probably still the Doctor of I don't know. He's still what he is. But who knows?
I miss some good Thugonomics.
But here's the problem. Is he burnt out, and is he gone sooner than he is now?
Well, the road was really tough on him, apparently. He did not like the travel
Correct.
and doing all that kind of stuff. And I get it. It's an insane schedule based on everything I've been told and read.
Yeah. Agreed. So who knows? What if?
Yeah.
Next up, what if the Bullet Club had invaded the WWE in 2016? Backstory. In 2016, the Bullet Club, they were super hot. Everybody knows.
Oh, yeah. Everybody had a Bullet Club shirt.
Originally, they were led by Prince Devitt / we call that guy Finn Balor these days. AJ Styles had kind of taken the reins. He had the Young Bucks, Carl Anderson, Doc Gallows. Those guys sound familiar, all of them. They were just pumping out merchandise in New Japan. Bullet Club.
Dude, you go through and Google this and study on this, and you will find more wrestling dork fanboy fiction about this kind of stuff and how much they look for it. Articles. And a lot of them, being dated to that time period, provided me a unique insight on all of this. I don't think all these guys could have worked in WWE. I really don't think all of them. in the Bullet Club, because the Bullet Club got huge by the time it was all over.
Well, like
It was
here's
the
so we're not,
NWO of Japan.
well, yeah, we're not talking about literally the entire Bullet Club coming. That ain't not what we're talking about here. So, because what actually ends up happening, by the way, is AJ Styles gets signed. He's at his peak. He leaves. They continue on. By the way, that's part of they leave and he's still there. Gallows and Anderson come later. They're the OC.
Yeah.
Balor's down in NXT being the demon that whatever. But here's the thing, I don't really know. Again, we get it. New Japan owned the name, so they couldn't really be the Bullet Club. But that's kind of like, could you call them, like, again, that was the whole point of the OC, the original club. Yeah. They kind of have come back. Think about that. Yeah. The OTC. We've kind of gone like full circle.
Well, yeah, I was looking at this, and then Monday night on Raw, we got Finn Balor versus AJ Styles. And it was an absolutely incredible match. AJ Styles looks better than I've ever seen him. He's just ripped all up. This is a really hot time for wrestling outside of the WWE. This Correct. Was really, really crazy time.
This is a point when people underestimate how hot the Bullet Club was. They were look, and I get it. It was as indie as it comes, but you could get shirts at Hot Topic. You could get, it was super over. Look, Kenny, Cody, Hangman, all of the Bucks, they were all over in New Japan doing their thing. So the question became, though, what if, however, when they got their hands on Styles, they had Balor, you get Anderson and Gallows, like, we could eventually, like, have an invasion. Call it what you want. And,
just an invasion angle.
An invasion angle. Look, it's the same. You know who we are, but you don't know why we're, like, it literally, they could have formed their own version of the NWO. Now, I'm not saying it works as good. Folks, pump the brakes. I didn't say that. I just said, but you can get the Club versus the Shield.
Yeah, that would have been a really good pop right there.
Yeah. Now, here's the question. If Balor's the Bullet Club leader, because at one point that was the case. He was the leader. So you make him heel coming off of NXT, bring him up and wonder, what's that guy already doing here? And then the rest of them show. Like, he brings his club. I'm bringing my club in. It never have to say the Bullet Club. It's just my club. It's the club. Or the OC, or whatever. Yeah. Instead of immediate babyface, we get heel AJ right out of the gate as well. But here's the other thing: does the New Japan Bullet Club lose steam in the wrestling world when everybody goes, the original Bullet Club's over there? Does that make? Because a lot of times it's like,
what if Cody would have come back? Okay, what if Cody would have come back here? Would his career be where it is now? Because he was still Stardust. Okay, they needed to get that Stardust off of him, and being in Japan helped him start that. It redefined his character.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. So if all of that attention comes, like, this is the real club.
Yes.
Does it slow down the spark of the Bullet Club, who eventually splinters into the Elite, who was splintered into eventually starting AEW?
Oh. That would have blocked the whole thing.
Does it slow down / stop any of that other stuff? Because guess what WWE has now? They got the cool kids. They've got the real club over there. They've got Finn Balor with Prince Devitt. They've got Gallows and Anderson, and they've got AJ Styles. That's the real club. Now, I'm not saying this to folks, but this is just kind of what I think the perception could have been. Whew. So if the indie fans then turn away from New Japan, what does that do to the Bucks and Kenny, the group that they have over there?
They would have not been as cool and not had the momentum necessary to start AWE, in my opinion. That momentum is what put AWE where it is now.
AEW, but yes.
AEW. Jesus, folks, we have a promotion here in Atlanta called AWE. They've been around a lot longer than AEW. I never get those two right.
Basically, yeah. So if they go all in and no pun intended, and they do the club and they get hot, does it cut off? Like I said, does it cut off the Bullet Club as far as the Japan stuff? Does it slow down? The Cody, Kenny, the Page, then Bucks Rise? Could literally all of that have been something that just either prevents or slows down because they're not AEW's not counterculture with the elite if there ain't no elite,
and there's no counterculture if you don't want to counter the culture. If WWE had got so hot, there wouldn't been a need for an alternative.
Agreed. Next up, what if the Crockett territory had gone national first? This one I was kind of like, hey, I know this is similar to a lot of some of the conversation we had in Magnum, so we may not hang around as a ton on this one. But obviously, guys, look, we've already talked about Jim Crockett Promotions, Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, Magnum TA, Road Warriors, Horsemen, all that kind of stuff. And by the way, I don't know, they had this TV station called the TBS. It was you might have heard it if you're a wrestling fan. You might have heard of it. So it was literally a huge advantage over what most territories had at the time because TBS was national.
Yeah.
The problem was Vince kind of went out and was smart enough to do cable deals, et cetera, et cetera. That's kind of what, actually the kind of the background. By the time Crockett in 86, 85, Crockett did try to go national. He buys the Georgia Championship Wrestling. He buys UWF, on and on and on. That's where they get the TBS, power when they kind of do this move. The problem is they immediately went into war with the WWF for pay-per-view.
Yeah.
The beginning of the end was Starrcade 87. By the way, I'm going to come back to this. Starrcade versus Survivor Series head-to-head basically was just the budding of they'd already done WrestleMania, and they'd used that as leverage, WrestleMania as a leverage piece for the cable companies. Bop, bop, bippity bop. The problem was, guess what? Do you know how I tied this back to the first one? Would this have been where Magnum was going for the title if he doesn't do it in 86?
Yeah, it would have. And that would have brought a lot more attention to Starrcade 87. We forget that WWE at one time was an NWA territory. And Vince took it and did something different with it. It left, got things put together. Regardless of what you think of him, Vince McMahon was an amazing radical wrestling mind who came up with the TV deals and these ideas and cable and pay-per-views and stuff like that. I don't think Crockett would have been able to do that because they didn't have. If they'd have brought in somebody that understood that stuff, maybe.
Well, listen, something as simple as if they kind of thought, hey, we're going to go national, if they would have jumped into pay-per-view earlier, if they buy Georgia sooner and get the TBS deal sooner, a lot of things could look different. Honestly, it could be as simple as, because everybody, like I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about the Magnum stuff, people forget that WWF at the time was, when we were kids, again, this is just us being, hey, let's go back in our kids and our brains. Remember, we always watched WWF at the time, and we would go like, oh, that's wrestling. The NWA, that's real wrestling. Because it looked gritty. It looked like fighting.
Yeah, it did. It was, it was people getting blood, crazy stuff, violent matches, big guys. God, Nick. But we wouldn't have got so many cool things. I mean, Vince did things that were cool, too. He brought in Cyndi Lauper. Okay? He had access to Andre the Giant. The Rock and Wrestling Show. Remember that? Remember how much fun that was?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
No. And also, when Crockett went around and bought those companies and then didn't capitalize on it, it put him in a situation where Ted Turner could step in. because he wasn't as financial. Maybe he stretched himself on this one. Okay, maybe he went too far out trying to make this work, and we didn't. And that's why they wound up being WCW.
Well, I think the problem is sometimes it's he who's first wins. Vince just was more successful because he got the pay-per-view, the real pay-per-view first. WrestleMania, as they get to the WrestleMania run up there, they get the cable deals, they get national faster. Because if they don't, I don't know, man. I think there is a bulk of America that would have, they prefer the grittier fighting, whatever. At that time, because you got to remember, this is '80s. This isn't today.
Yeah.
They prefer that. If they win, they go national. You got to, by the way, they were working with the NWA, so the territory systems might last longer or last. Mm-hmm. Because Crockett's not trying to put them out of business. Vince wanted them gone. So we might get that or whatever. What if WWE's the underdog? WWF's the underdog at that point.
If they had enough people and they had all these companies together, maybe working together instead of being bought out, you might have seen something better out of it.
Look, I get it, folks. A lot of people think like, hey, if Crockett wins, blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing, though. I don't know. With all due respect to everybody involved, if WWEF loses the war to NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions, whatever, I don't know that they still had the horses at NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions, or the push that Vince McMahon had to make it what. I don't know where wrestling's at, period, at this point, because I don't think NWA builds what WWE had WF built and has become over the last 40 years.
The money, the brilliant decisions, the going out and embracing new technologies that Vince did really, really helped. That could have just, if NWA or Crockett Productions had to come back without all that insight and knowledge, I don't think they would have kept it if they'd have gone national. I don't think they could have kept it.
No, I don't. I don't. In the long run, they would have had to sold to somebody, and that's the $1 million question. So, last one before we get out of here, man. It's pertinent because of what kind of is going on currently at the moment. What if John Cena had turned heel specifically in 2012? Why 2012, you ask? Because in 2012, John Cena was essentially the face of WWE at the time. He had been for like a decade. He was, full of hustle, loyalty, and respect. He had built this feud up with The Rock for over a year. They had their big main event there at WrestleMania 28. Once in a lifetime, although it would repeat.
That it happened next year, too.
That happened again the next year. But so the reason why we bring this up is this was like literally the time that a lot of people thought this was the time to turn him. Because I don't know if you remember, like, there's a shot, which I'm going to use in a thumbnail for this episode, by the way, because I found it, of John Cena sitting on the ramp after that loss, looking back at the ring, and just a look of complete emotional turmoil. Like, he's just like, I'm like, that's your moment. Like, when I found that picture, I'm like, that's the moment that John Cena turns heel. It should have been. Whatever.
Well, look at it and see. Would we ever got the Cena we have now had he done that? Would we ever got the massive merchandise sales? Had we done that? The Make-A-Wish. Would we have got some of the smart fans saying, you can't wrestle, John Cena sucks? Maybe they wouldn't have got like that. Maybe those fans wouldn't be there had.
I don't. The John Cena sucks. Yes, because people would have been pissed that he was a heel champion that couldn't wrestle. In their opinion, I'm just saying. You know what I'm saying? Like that.
Wouldn't it make The Rock into a baby face? And
yeah. So because look, obviously he stayed a baby face. Doesn't turn heel. He does the promo. He goes on to feud that whole year. He gets his win back from John Cena or from The Rock at WrestleMania 29. Went on to feud with Punk, Bray, all etc. whatever. But if he turns heel, like you said, obviously at some point the whole feud the next year has to flip, right? That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The 29 match, he completely has to flip, and The Rock has to become the babyface, like the outright babyface. Does that change how you feel about that match?
Well, if it was a different outcome like that, it brought all this drama into it. It may change the way I feel not only about the match but about WB till today. I mean, would he have turned into just a normal guy on the card? Would he have had lesser impact? Like, who else came out of that class?
The Orton class, the Orton, Batista, Cena, and Lesnar.
Okay, so look at Batista. Not as much impact as Cena. Lesnar, not as much long-term impact as Cena. Randy hasn't had as much impact as Cena. If Cena would have turned heel, do you really think he would have got 17 champions by now? Championships?
Sure. Ric Flair got most of his as a heel.
That wasn't the point, though. They wanted to put the belt on him to sell merch, to sell those hats, to do,
But here, I only say this because I'm going to ask. Go back and look at the length of his title reigns. They don't keep the belt on him as long as people think. Think about this. Punk the heel had the belt for a year, over a year.
Wow.
And
Roman Reigns as a heel had it forever.
So I think over the years, we just hear he was a 17-time champion. He was a champion all the time. Not really. His championship reigns, some of them were. I'm not saying none of them were, but a lot of his championship reigns really weren't that long. He was in the era where we were like playing hot potato with the title.
Yeah, we think about it like we do now, where people have lengthy championship runs.
The reverse.
Yeah, and it's probably changed my perception of this. That I would think Cena had been, if he was a 17-time champion, he would have been champion 17 years, which he didn't.
Right.
So. Flip flop back and forth.
Yeah, so we'll
vary
see.
The character. Do people take him more seriously?
Could be. I mean, we'll see. Look, if he's the heel, when he feuds with CM Punk, that makes CM Punk the babyface. And by the way, if you're feuding with Cena as a heel, he's clearly the top heel, so that makes Punk the top babyface.
Punk
so does he leave? Because guess what? He's probably main eventing WrestleMania, the one he gets bypassed, not main eventing, because it would probably be Cena and Punk after. You see what I mean? Or if they flip-flop, go the other direction. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways you go, but let's look at the other one. Guys like this. If he's a heel, because when he's a babyface, he's always winning. Heels lose more often, correct?
Yeah.
It's acceptable for heels to lose. So you mean he doesn't take the show? I couldn't even say it without saying. People are always talking about he buried everybody. Like if he's the heel, he doesn't have to take the shovel to Daniel Bryan, The Shield, Dolph Ziggler, etc., etc. You know, all the names that he's accused of just absolutely burying. You don't have to.
Why is it acceptable to compete like that and bury your competition anywhere else in the real world besides wrestling?
Yeah, I have no idea.
I mean, if you were in a position and you were trying to stop somebody from getting your job, like if you're a plumber and somebody opens up a plumbing business across the street from you, wouldn't you be doing everything you could to conquer that guy in some way? I don't see what Cena did is wrong. I just think it's the fact that it was in public media that it got such a bad backlash.
Yeah. I don't know. Does it, if he's the heel, does the heel Roman thing not happen? Do they just obsess and they're like, hey, we're going to just keep him as the baby face? Maybe. Or
tap out pod even happened, Nick.
Honestly, probably not.
Because, when you were over, I was over at your house for WrestleMania and you were all into that Cena match. Would this have happened? Would we be here, sitting on top of this global multimedia empire?
If Cena's the heel and he doesn't do the Make-A-Wishes and he doesn't do Lauren's Make-A-Wish, Rachel doesn't care. Rachel doesn't care about wrestling.
Would you be married?
No.
Because she used John Cena to pick you up, didn't she?
Yeah. basically.
Well, maybe that's the wrong way to put it. But she used it to help seduce you.
John Cena was her wingman. Yeah, there you go. She, wants to watch Mania because of Lauren seeing John Cena. So she comes over to the house, and the rest is history, as they say. And we're probably not doing a podcast if I'm not married living here. Pretty interesting, isn't it? But what if? What if?
Watchers.
Yeah. Look, I think, look, obviously we've got to the point where he is, who he is, but a lot of things could be different. Look, guys, we talked about it. There were 13 pages of notes. You can find all of those notes just at the $1 level, patreon.com/tappedoutpod. You get the shows early, you get the bonus content, all of that kind of stuff. I don't know. There's a review for pretty much everything that comes on TV and PLEs and pay-per-views as well. Tappedoutpod.com is our YouTube channel, and that's where you could be watching this as well. But we always say if you want everything and anything that has to do with the Tapped Out Podcast Network, patreon.com/tappedoutpod. Man, this is a long day at the office. I appreciate you hanging me for a change.
Oh yeah, man. It was a great time. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I told you. It's a long day at the office when the day starts at 6:30 and you're finally done with both podcasts at 1:45. So,
well, I came in late, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. Look, guys, hey, we appreciate you joining in. You got anything else, man? I know I'll have to look at what the schedule says we're due for next week. I can't remember if it's a real wrestling or a top 10 or whatever. Let us know what you guys think. Tappedoutpod@gmail.com.
I can start studying, watching the old wrestling footage and the old wrestling movies has been so much fun. Please don't do Nanny. What was that one? Please, the Hogan's movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I had a couple on schedule. I think I'm like, all right, that ain't one of them. I promise you. But look, man, anything else before we get out of here, man?
No, man, I'm good. I had a blast. Thank you.
Well,
folks.
man,
Thank you for listening.
Well, look for us this weekend, whether it's, at a Southern Fried on Saturday, and I can't even remember where I said I would go maybe on a Friday if I don't go any Friday.
A fat men with black shirts. Pick us out.
Speaking of which, off the air, I got to have a conversation about ordering some shirts that are not black. So, on that note, folks, he clearly has nothing left. So, as the old saying, brother, if I've got nothing and you've got nothing, what time is it?
It's time to tap out.